Welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at a collection of headlines from India, all dated January 17th, 2025.
Kind of like a time capsule, a snapshot of what was making news that day.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting? We've got everything from space exploration to, well, celebrity scandals.
Medical breakthroughs, cricket updates, legal battles.
It's amazing how these seemingly random headlines, when you look at them together, can actually paint a picture of larger trends and issues that were unfolding.
So let's jump in, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's start with something that caught my eye. This proposal to redefine obesity.
Ah, yes, the Lancet Commission. They're suggesting we move beyond just BMI.
And why is that? I mean, a lot of people already kind of view BMI as, not the most perfect measurement.
Well, the proposal is saying that BMI can be helpful, but it's just too simplistic.
Right.
It doesn't consider individual variations.
What kinds of variation?
Well, things like body composition, how fat is distributed, or any underlying health risks that might be there.
So basically, they're trying to recognize that obesity is more complex than just a single number on a scale.
Yeah, moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach.
It makes me think of how we used to think about cholesterol, like it was just one number, right?
Exactly. And now we understand there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol.
So this could be a similar shift in how we think about and treat obesity.
It very well could, leading to more personalized treatment and hopefully reducing some of the stigma that's often associated with it.
Okay, so from a potential revolution in healthcare, let's blast off to space for a second.
Sounds good to me.
ISRO, India's space agency, had a big win successfully docking SpaceX satellites.
Not an easy feat. This puts India in a pretty exclusive club of nations with this capability.
A sign of major progress in their space technology program.
Absolutely. Think about it. Satellite repair, maybe even space station construction.
The future's getting closer. All right, back down to Earth. There's news about Hindenburg Research.
The firm behind those Adani Group allegations, you mean? They've disbanded.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder what happens now.
Their tactics were controversial, no doubt, but they definitely brought corporate accountability into the spotlight.
Do you think this is a win for big businesses, or will someone else step up and fill that watchdog role?
It'll be interesting to see what unfolds, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Speaking of interesting legal developments, the Supreme Court had some strong words for the Enforcement Directorate.
The ED. Yeah, they were criticized for how they handled the Shine Group case, specifically that PMLA bail exception rule.
Okay, for those of us who aren't legal experts, break that down a bit.
So the PMLA, that's the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and it basically makes it incredibly difficult to get bail if you're accused of money laundering.
And the Supreme Court wasn't happy with how that was applied in this case.
Right, they raised concerns about due process and whether this provision could be misused.
But this isn't just some abstract legal debate either, right? There's a human story here.
Absolutely. The case of Shashi Bala, a school teacher who got caught up in all of this, really highlights the impact this can have on ordinary people.
Caught up how?
Well, it shows how even individuals with minimal involvement in these alleged financial crimes can end up facing extended detention without bail.
So this case is really raising questions about fairness within the legal system.
Yeah, how do we effectively combat money laundering while also ensuring that people's rights are protected?
Definitely something to think about. Okay, let's move to some international news. There was a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Finally, right.
And I read that Pune's Jewish community is breathing a sigh of relief.
Understandably so. That conflict has caused so much anxiety and fear, not just in the region, but for people around the world.
Absolutely. And while a ceasefire is good news.
It's important to remember it is just a ceasefire. The conflict itself isn't resolved.
Right. There's a long road ahead.
A lot of complex issues that need to be addressed.
And speaking of situations with serious consequences, did you see what happened to Saif Ali Khan?
The Bollywood actor. Yeah, the home invasion. That was shocking.
I mean, stabbed during a robbery is scary enough, but then you hear about the ransom demand.
1 crore rupees they wanted from his son.
Unbelievable. What does this say about celebrity safety in Mumbai?
It's a serious concern, for sure. This incident has a lot of people questioning if enough is being done to protect high-profile individuals.
And I can't imagine the psychological impact on everyone involved.
Especially the child. That kind of trauma can be very difficult to deal with.
All right, switching gears. Good news for a lot of workers. The government has approved the 8th Pay Commission.
That's huge. This commission sets the salaries and benefits for millions of central government employees.
And that impacts the entire economy, right?
Absolutely. Their recommendations have a ripple effect.
I'm curious, what do you think the new pay scales will look like? Will they be able to keep up with inflation?
I guess we'll have to wait and see, but it's certainly something a lot of people are watching closely.
For sure. Okay, back to international news. Things are still tense in the Middle East.
Yeah, Netanyahu actually delayed those cabinet discussions on the Gaza ceasefire.
Why the delay?
Seems Hamas has some new demands, adding another layer of complexity to the situation.
So the big question is, will the ceasefire hold?
And if not, what are the consequences? This is a very delicate situation.
Let's hope for the best. Okay, time for some lighter news, cricket fans. Are you ready?
Always.
The Ranji Trophy is coming up, and all eyes are on the Delhi team.
Rishabh Pant is likely to be captain, which is exciting.
And the million-dollar question, will Virat Kohli play?
That's what everyone wants to know. His participation would be a game changer, literally.
No doubt about that. In other news, a court in Mumbai handed down a sentence in a fake currency case.
Yeah, 4 individuals got 5 years each for circulating counterfeit rupees.
This seems to be an ongoing problem, right?
It is. Counterfeit currency undermines the entire financial system. It's a serious crime.
And agencies like the NIA and DRI are working hard to combat it.
It's a constant battle, but a vital one to protect our economy.
Absolutely. Speaking of battles, the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo continues to be volatile.
Clashes between the army and those M23 rebels, it's really bad.
I read there were injuries and people being forced to flee their homes.
Sadly, yes. And to make matters worse, there are reports that Rwanda might be involved, supporting the M23.
This conflict has been going on for so long. It's really heartbreaking.
It's a humanitarian crisis, a reminder of the devastating human cost of these conflicts.
And on that somber note, let's end this segment on something a bit more uplifting, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that.
The Chief Minister of Delhi visited the Republic Day camp.
Oh, I saw pictures. She was with the NCC cadets. Looked like a great event.
She praised the cadets for their dedication and patriotism, and I think it's a really important message.
Especially in a diverse nation like India, seeing young people from all walks of life coming together and celebrating their country.
It really gives you hope for the future. All right, we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive, from the complexities of obesity to the vast reaches of space and the turmoil in the DRC.
It's incredible how much we can learn from just a single day's worth of headlines.
And we're not done yet. We'll be back soon to continue exploring these stories and uncover even more connections between them.
Welcome back, everyone. Glad to have you with us as we continue to explore these headlines from January 17th, 2025.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this. It's amazing how much you can unpack from just a single day's worth of news.
Absolutely. It's like a little window into what was happening in different corners of the world.
Let's go back to that proposal to redefine obesity. That really sparked my curiosity.
The Lancet Commission, yeah, they're advocating for a shift beyond just BMI.
I remember you saying that BMI doesn't tell the whole story.
Right. It's like trying to sum up a whole book with just one sentence.
So what are some of the specific arguments for moving beyond BMI?
Well, for one, it doesn't account for differences in body composition, muscle mass versus fat.
So someone who's very muscular could have a high BMI but be perfectly healthy.
Exactly. And then there's fat distribution, where the fat is located on your body matters.
And that's not reflected in BMI either.
Nope. And of course, there are underlying health risks that BMI just doesn't capture.
So it sounds like they're trying to move towards a more personalized understanding of obesity.
Yeah, recognizing that it's not just about weight, it's about a whole range of factors that contribute to a person's overall health.
And that could lead to better treatment strategies.
More targeted, more effective, and hopefully less judgment.
For sure. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. ISRO's success with those SpaceX satellites, that was pretty impressive.
A major accomplishment, really puts India on the map in terms of space technology.
We talked about some of the potential applications like satellite repair.
Right, and the possibility of building larger structures in space, even space stations.
It feels like we're entering a new era of space exploration, one where these kinds of complex maneuvers are becoming more routine.
And that opens up so many possibilities, scientific advancements, commercial opportunities. It's exciting to think about.
Absolutely. All right, back on Earth, let's revisit the Supreme Court ruling on the Enforcement Directorate.
The ED, yeah, they were criticized for how they applied the PMLA bail provisions.
Specifically in the Shine Group case.
Right. And that case really highlights the concerns about due process, making sure that everyone is treated fairly under the law.
I remember you mentioning Shashi Bala, the school teacher who got caught up in this whole thing.
Her story really humanizes this issue, shows how the legal system can sometimes have unintended consequences.
And it raises questions about the balance between combating financial crimes and protecting individual rights.
A delicate balance, for sure, and one that's essential to get right.
No doubt. Okay, shifting to international news, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Is there any update on that?
Well, it's still holding, which is good news, but the situation is very fragile.
Because
Netanyahu postponed those cabinet discussions on the ceasefire. There are apparently new demands from Hamas.
so the path to a lasting peace is still very uncertain.
Lots of hurdles to overcome, deep-seated mistrust, political complexities. It's going to be a long and difficult process.
Let's hope they can find a way forward. And speaking of challenging situations, that attack on Saif Ali Khan, that was just awful.
A home invasion, a stabbing, a ransom demand. It's a nightmare scenario.
It really makes you think about the risks that high-profile individuals face.
And the impact on their families, that kind of trauma can be devastating.
For sure. Okay, let's move on to something a bit more positive. The Eighth Pay Commission. That's got to be a good news for a lot of people.
Definitely, millions of central government employees are eagerly awaiting their recommendations.
Their decisions have a ripple effect throughout the economy, so it's a big deal.
They'll be looking at things like inflation, the cost of living, making sure that salaries keep pace with the realities on the ground.
And they have to balance that with the government's budget constraints.
It's a tough job, for sure, but a crucial one.
Okay, back to the global stage. The situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it sounds like things are escalating.
Those clashes between the army and the M23 rebels are continuing. There are reports of casualties, displacement. It's a very worrying situation.
And there's the added complication of potential Rwandan involvement.
Yeah, that adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile conflict.
It's a reminder that these regional conflicts can have far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely, and it highlights the need for a coordinated international response, diplomatic efforts, humanitarian aid, peacekeeping operations. It's a multifaceted challenge.
And lastly, let's end on a more positive note. That visit by the chief minister to the Republic Day camp, that was nice to see.
Yeah, her interaction with those NCC cadets was really inspiring. It's great to see young people so engaged and committed to their country.
Their enthusiasm is contagious.
It gives you hope for the future, seeing the next generation stepping up and embracing their role in shaping the nation.
We've covered a lot of ground in this segment, from the intricacies of the legal system to the volatile situation in the DRC and the promising achievements of ISRO.
It's fascinating how these seemingly disparate headlines all connect to paint a broader picture of the world we live in.
We'll be back soon for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the remaining headlines and uncover even more connections between them. And we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into those headlines from January 17th, 2025.
Quite a journey it's been.
I know, right? From space to the courts to global conflicts, it's amazing how much we've uncovered.
And we still have a few more headlines to explore. Let's pick up where we left off. Hindenburg Research, the firm that went after the Adani Group, they've disbanded.
Yeah, it kind of leaves a vacuum, doesn't it?
In a way, yes, they were controversial, but they definitely played a role in holding corporations accountable.
So what happens now? Do you think their absence will embolden some companies to, maybe cut corners or engage in shady practices?
It's possible, but we also have other mechanisms in place. Regulatory bodies, investigative journalists, they all play a part.
So it's a wait-and-see situation. Will someone else step up to fill that watchdog role, or will the existing systems be enough?
Time will tell, but it'll be interesting to watch how things unfold, that's for sure.
All right, let's talk about the Eighth Pay Commission. That's a big one for a lot of people.
Huge implications, not just for government employees, but for the entire economy.
We talked about the challenges they face, balancing employee needs with fiscal responsibility, but what specifically do you think they'll focus on?
Well, inflation is a big concern. They'll have to make sure that salaries keep pace with the rising cost of living.
Otherwise, people's purchasing power goes down, right?
Exactly, and that can have a ripple effect throughout the economy. They'll also be looking at pay scales and comparable sectors. They need to make sure government jobs are competitive.
Attract and retain talent, right?
Precisely. It's a complex equation with a lot of moving parts.
For sure. Okay, back to the Middle East. The ceasefire is holding, but things are still very tense.
Netanyahu delaying those cabinet discussions because of Hamas's new demands, it just shows how fragile the situation is.
What are the chances of a lasting peace agreement, do you think? It seems like there's so much mistrust and animosity.
It's a long road, that's for sure, but I think the key is dialogue. keeping those lines of communication open.
And a willingness to compromise from all sides.
Absolutely. Without that, it's hard to see how they can bridge those divides.
Let's hope they can find a way. Okay, let's talk about that fake currency case, the one where those 4 individuals were sentenced.
5 years each, yeah, that's a pretty stiff penalty.
It shows how seriously the authorities are taking this issue. Counterfeit currency really can wreak havoc on an economy.
Absolutely. It undermines trust in the financial system, can be used to fund illegal activities. It's a serious problem.
And it seems like it's a global problem, not just confined to India.
Oh, absolutely. Agencies like the NIA and DRI are working with international partners to combat this. It's a constant battle.
Okay, last but not least, the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's just heartbreaking.
Those ongoing clashes, the displacement, the humanitarian crisis, it's a terrible situation.
And the potential Rwandan involvement just adds fuel to the fire.
It's a complex conflict with deep roots. Finding a solution is going to require a multi-pronged approach.
What would that look like?
Well, first and foremost, addressing the humanitarian crisis, getting aid to those who need it.
Of course, but that's just a band-aid, right?
Right. Long term, you need to address the underlying political and economic issues. That's where diplomacy comes in.
And potentially peacekeeping forces to stabilize the region.
Exactly. It's a multifaceted challenge that requires a coordinated international response.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dives. Quite a range of topics we covered.
We went from the heights of space exploration, the depths of human conflict, and everything in between.
It's amazing how a single day's worth of headlines can give you such a snapshot of the world.
And it shows how interconnected everything is. What happens in one corner of the world can have ripple effects everywhere else.
It's a reminder to stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking questions. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive and that it's given you some food for thought.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deeper.
We'll see you then.